Thank you for making it this far. And on behalf of UNEP and our partners for this session, WMO and UNDRR, it's my pleasure to welcome you to what I hope will be an engaging, reflective, open, and critical discussion on how we can go from global early warning systems to local water management, action, and response. In recent weeks, Slovenia, Hawaii, Greece, France are just a few of the countries that we've seen grappling with the extreme impacts of climate change and disasters. Over the past few years, these impacts and their locations have grown exponentially, including places where I'm sure all of us either live or have loved ones living. On the other hand, we have incredible innovation and advances happening in country and global data sets and online systems at the moment that are advancing early warning. And we're going to be showcasing a few of them here in the session today. But the reality is that they're not working well enough. Too many people aren't being reached with the right information on what to do in time. Too many systems aren't working or speaking to each other. Too much damage, destruction, and loss of life is still happening. We could advance to the next slide. Oh, thank you. In today's session, we're going to be presenting a few of these systems and tools that have been developed by UNEP, WMO, DRR, the World Food Program, DHI, and other partners. We'll hear from a few countries on their needs and experiences in using early warning systems for water management and discuss how we can achieve more socially inclusive early warning efforts. Then we want to hear from all of you in the room and online. And we will be encouraging a dialogue between the organizations that are developing these systems and the people that we're trying to reach with them. At the end, we'll have some reflections from the GCF on their thoughts and plans for advancing early warning systems for water. First, it's my pleasure to show an opening video message from the director of UNDRR, Paola Albrito, who's unfortunately not able to be with us here in person this morning.
Dear delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Geneva. I regret that I cannot be with you in person to join the discussion on this very important topic. Expanding and strengthening early warning system is not only a key target of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, but also one of the most proven and cost-effective ways of saving lives and reducing economic losses. With 9 out of 10 disasters due to water-related hazards, it is particularly important to work with the water sector to foster effective management approaches and build capacity. In the recent midterm review of the Sendai Framework, it is recognized the need for risk-informed water resources management to strengthen disaster preparedness, disaster risk reduction, and climate change adaptation. 3 recommendations on multi-hazard early warning systems stands out. First, mobilization of resources, technology, and capacity is critical to implement and extend the reach of multi-hazards early warning system and ensure their application in relation to water-related hazards. This includes the development of guiding strategies across phases of the early warning chains, connecting water challenges with the challenges of other sectors. Second, vulnerability data, including information on human health, ecosystem health, and gender. It is critical for the effective implementation of early warning system. Where possible, this should be linked to social protection systems, steering investments for more resilient water systems. Third, early warning systems needs to be people-centered and accessible for persons with disability. Local communities and the most at risk depend on safer water resources for their livelihood. Therefore, multi-hazards early warning systems should draw on local, traditional, and indigenous knowledge. Only if we work more closely with community, we can reach the last mile. Let me reiterate that we need everyone's support to advocate for a prevention-first agenda. The conversation today is one step on this path. And I'm optimistic that if we build on the outcome of the midterm review of the Sendai framework, as well as the UN 2023 Water Conference, including the Water Action Agenda, and further strengthen partnership and collaboration across sectors, we can fundamentally transform decision-making to deliver disaster resilience for everyone. Thank you, and I wish you a successful event.
Thank you so much to Paola. Thank you for DRR for those opening remarks. We're now going to present a few of the systems that we'll be talking about more in depth today. To start off with, I want to give a little bit of context. Earlier this year, the three organizations that have come together today for this session, WMO, DRR, and UNEP, had the pleasure of being technical leads for a high-level dialogue on climate, resilience, and environment that happened at the historic UN 2023 Water Conference. Among other things, at that dialogue, we discussed something called Early Warnings for All, which is a Secretary General initiative. And we discussed how to take forward this work on really increasing resilience around the world and reaching the last person in early warning systems. And I think that the slide that I'm showing on the screen, I think shows some incredibly important context for the spirit behind this work. The spirit behind the work that we all need to do together. This slide is actually an initiative funded by the Swiss with a number of partners that you can see on the bottom of the screen. Among other things, WMO, UNDRR, and something called the SOF, which is a new global facility financing adaptation and resilience and early warning systems. UNEP is one of many members that's part of that. You'll hear a bit about that later on in this presentation. But what you can see on this slide is really the intention of collaborative efforts and stakeholder engagement to really talk with people about what they need in terms of early warning systems, what's working, to have an iterative process. And I think that's something that we can't forget. This is the discussion that we're hoping to start along those lines today, and we hope to continue that in the coming months. I'm about to hand over to my colleague Anam from the Global Environment Monitoring System at UNEP. And before we go into those systems, what I'd like to do is just to make sure that you're all awake and paying attention and have been listening to some of our messages so far, we would like you to kindly go onto this Menti. I'm sure that everyone knows how to do this. I'm sure this is not your first time, but in case it is, please open your phone or your laptop and go to www.menti.com. You can scan the QR code on the screen, or you can put in the code 78840091. And I'll give you a second to get on to the Menti, and we will start to show some of the results. It starts off with a really softball question for you. The first question that hopefully isn't difficult for anyone to answer is, where in the world are you based? Where do you live when you're not here in this room at Stockholm World Water Week? I hope we have some representatives from Kenya who are able to put their responses in. Oh, that's fantastic. We have lots of people. Oh, good, good, good. Switzerland is big. USA, France, Nairobi in the house. Excellent. I'll just give you a second. I'd love to see where you are right now. If you're joining us online, if you're here in the room, where in the world are you normally? Palestine, Mexico, Geneva, Arizona. Wonderful. It must be very early or very late in Arizona right now. Welcome from Arizona. Excellent. Thanks so much, everyone. We have two more questions that we'll go through now, and then we'll come back to this Menti. So please do keep the link open on your browser. The second question for you is, drum roll, what is a water-related disaster? Which of these is a water-related disaster? And we have forest fires, floods, toxic algal blooms, drought, storm, landslides. You may choose more than one answer. I guess flood's a pretty easy one. We could have chosen something more difficult. It's clearly water related. Yeah, thanks everyone. I like seeing the it's a pretty equal spread across those answers. And in fact, it's a bit of a trick question. In fact, I would consider all of these, and I'm looking to Kristen because maybe she has a different point of view, but I would consider all of these water related disasters. I think just about any kind of natural disaster or climate related disaster you can think of involves water in some way. It's too much, it's too little. Increasingly, it's polluted or even toxic, harmful to humans. And we're seeing more and more of those kinds of disasters. For those of you from the States, you might be aware that the entire East Coast around New Mexico, the beaches were shut down over the summer because of harmful algal blooms coming down the river, going to the coasts and oceans. So what we're seeing is more and more of these kinds of disasters affecting water all over the world. And wherever you are in the world, you're seeing them close to you, close to home. So yes, I would say these are all, in my opinion, water-related disasters. We have one third question for now before we go to our presentation. And the third question is, what extent of all disasters are water-related? So that last question might give you a bit of a clue, or maybe you know this number off the top of your head. It's something we hear quite often. Please vote. I think you can only choose one answer for this one. I think we've got a smart audience. It is, in fact, over 90% of all disasters are water related, which makes it, I think, quite astounding that water isn't more visible often in the disaster space. But that's what hopefully sessions like this will help us address. Thanks so much for that little quiz this morning. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Anham to present some of the systems that we'll be talking about in today's session. We have a number of panelists here that can answer questions about these systems. We also have a number of people from countries online later on today who will be able to talk about that from a country perspective. So over to you, Anam. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz, for a great introduction. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a series of slides which are UN-wide early warning systems that we would like to showcase. But before that, the whole value chain approach towards early warnings for all is the approach that the UN uses to make sure that everyone is ready when we face problems such as natural disasters. This includes thinking about different groups of people and what they need to know. The approach also focuses on different types of dangers, like we just saw in the Menti. There's 4 important parts when it comes to the early warning for all. The first one is gathering information about risks. Who, what, when might be affected. The second is using predictive tools to model the future under various conditions to be able to understand the severity of the risk. And then third is making sure that everyone gets the right information quickly. And fourth is taking action by supporting and helping to prepare for the uprising risk and possible adaptation and mitigation measures to be shared with the wider community. So UNEP's early warning projects on climate change adaptation. Here on the map, you can see that's represented by the red dots, and we have quite a few projects happening in the small island developing states. Speaking also further on small island developing states, UNEP has 2 approved GCF funded initiatives under implementation. One of them is a 49.9 million program for 5 Pacific small island developing states over the span of 5 years. And the second one is 21.7 million project for specifically Timor-Leste over a span of 5 years. The outputs that are mentioned in the slides are not the outputs of the whole portfolio, but just the ones that are water related. But both projects are focusing on an end-to-end climate information service and multi-hazard early warning system. And these initiatives are going to directly contribute to the attainment of selected targets and indicators for the Paris Agreement, SDGs, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. Well, those are not just the only GCF projects that are in the pipeline. UNEP has 8 other proposals covering 15 countries across Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And 12 countries are also supported under the Systematic Observations Financing Facility, which is SOF, which was just mentioned in passing earlier, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about SOF in the next slide. So SOF is a United Nations multi-partner trust fund established at COP26 in 2021 by WMO, UNDP, and UNEP for the provision of a global public good. This is basic weather and climate observations. Now, you might be asking, why have SOF been created? Well, all weather and climate services, including early warning systems, are based on the use of global basic weather and climate data. These services are critical to save lives and livelihoods and protect the property and ecosystems. Current data gaps significantly impact the quality of weather and climate services everywhere. It's been noted that it is largely developing nations that have the largest data gaps. Now, that's not new, but it is our responsibility, and it's also important that these countries are supported in order for global effective weather and climate services. By the end of 2023, SOF will have mobilized $65 million and is currently supporting 26 countries with an additional 14 programmed in the next year. UNEP has a long-standing relationship with DHI spanning to more than 25 years. So this decision support tool showcased on this slide compiles multiple tools of data and responds to a need for improved capacity of managers operating in transboundary river basins to recognize and address the implications of changing climatic scenarios and land use on water resource management. Furthermore, the capacity building on the tools make sure that there is effective use of the tool for early warning systems. So here's a little bit more of a interesting progression of how we can use the tool. So the first step is to get real-time hydromet observation data as well as the best available meteorological information to use a detailed, and then couple that with a detailed river basin model and assimilate the data using the data assimilation technology. And then what you get is a precise flood forecast in space and time, which you can visualize and report early warnings in real time. And you can warn the population to allow implementation of alleviation measures in time. Our DHI colleagues will be in the room and will be available to answer questions. And we also have colleagues from Ghana online who will be speaking in shortly after, and they can tell us more about how they use the tool to support early warning. Next, we have a slightly different type of early warning, but an important early warning. So we know that rivers are a major source of plastic pollution, and it's estimated that 70 to 80% of marine plastic originates on land. So therefore, it's very important to track freshwater in an efficient way in order to be able to tackle land-based plastic pollution before it gets to the oceans. UNEP DHI, along with the GPML team of UNEP, have developed an operational early warning system for macroplastic litter in many major rivers of the world. This information can be used to identify critical locations such as plastic litter hotspots, as well as help identify where the problems originate. So currently the model outputs include changes over time of plastic litter load along the river in tons per day. hotspots on land and along the river, as well as seasonal predictions. However, these models are more connected than we think. It's not just plastic pollution. This model can give us a little more information on stormwater, wastewater systems, as well as algal blooms. And it also shows a full source to sea approach. Furthermore, this information can be a useful indication on when and where to intervene, and how and what to help countries with to plan and prioritize interventions to combat plastic pollution. Next, we will go to what FAO is doing with Burundi. So UNEP is working closely with FAO to strengthen the link between ecosystem and human resilience to drought because of the strong interlinkage of water and food security. The UN network is working on preventing natural disasters in addition to currently responding to natural disasters. And then this is HydroSource. HydroSource is the global hydrological status and outlook system. It is a tool created to monitor and predict global freshwater hydrological conditions. The system reports on the current global hydrological status, including groundwater, river flow, and soil moisture. It also creates an appraisal of where the current status is significantly different from normal, for example, indicating potential drought and flood situations. And an assessment of whether this is likely to get better or worse over the coming weeks and months. Making hydrological information is the first step to empower stakeholders to make informed decisions. HydroSource will inform planning, decision, and policy making towards addressing the current gaps in availability of water information. Understanding the water resource availability allows better planning and support for safe drinking water, informs impacts on people, industries, and in the environment. So in broader terms, if we talk about it in terms of SDGs, we're talking about SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 14, and 15. So therefore, water is very interconnected, and it is a critical resource that we really need to think about. And so that, to wrap it all up, 95% of the world's population has access to mobile broadband networks, and nearly 75% owns a mobile phone. That means that mobile networks are a very powerful communication channel that can effectively target those in risk areas. The Early Warnings for All initiative brings together the broader UN system, governments, civil society, and development partners across the public and private sectors to enhance collaboration and accelerated action to address gaps and deliver people-centered, end-to-end, multi-hazard early warning systems that leaves no one behind. Through coordination and collaboration, the initiative aims to build on and scale up existing efforts and capacities, promoting synergies among initiatives and partnerships across sectors.
Thank you so much, Anam. What Anam has just presented represents the work of dozens of organizations, WMO, DRR, UNEP, the World Food Program, working in 20, 30, 40 countries around the world with millions of dollars going to these systems. With all of these systems out there and all of this money and all of these partners, you would think we have all of the problems solved. That's not the case, clearly not. So what we really want to get to now in the second half of this session, or the next part of this session, is to really look at what is not working, what is stopping us from getting better, where are the barriers, and how can we overcome them? I'm going to start off by just asking you to go back to your Menti for the last two questions that we have before we switch to our country representatives that have joined us online. So if you could just go back to hopefully you have not closed your screen, but if you have, please rescan the QR code or put in the code of 78840091 at menti.com. And you should see this question come up on your screen. The question should look something like this. What is hindering, in your opinion, the greater uptake of early warning systems? What's stopping us from being 100% successful? This is a free response. You can put in anything you like. Feel free to be honest. They're just typing very long responses. What do you think? Oh, all right. All right. Finance. Oh, that's appearing high in the middle. I'm sure our GCF colleague will have something to say about that later on in the session. Access to technology, sustainability, lack of local data, very important. The data isn't circular. I'd love to know what the person who said that means by that. Maybe they can tell us. I would love that. Communication, autocracy, excellent. Unpredictability, institutional arrangements, capacity knowledge, illiteracy, access to technology, capacity, too many platforms, very good point. Cost, yes. Communication, status quo. Wow, excellent. Don't know how to use, yes, yes, yes. Collaboration is stopping us. A lack of collaboration, it sounds like. We have way too many systems. Weak organization, data, local data, funding for, can't read that top word, funding for maintenance, thank you. Non-standardization, awareness, translate technology. Wow, excellent. Thank you so much. I'll give it another few seconds because I'm loving the responses that we're getting here. I think people are getting right to the heart of the problems. Finance. Does that say OM? There's a little one there in the middle.
Yeah, that's OM.
OM, okay. I'd love to know what that means. Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like we've got to, yeah, please. Operational maintenance. Okay, so maintenance of the system. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're all guilty of getting funding from a certain funding source. We create a project for a country or a set of countries. That funding ends, that project ends, the system ends. It's a big problem. Excellent. Thank you so much. That's a very, very rich set of responses. And I am sure that our panelists are already thinking about how to respond to some of these critical points when we get to our panel. Wonderful. We have one more slide in our Menti, and we'll go to that now before we hear from our countries. Sorry?
That's quite the picture.
That's quite the picture, yes. The last question is, with all of these problems that we have, all the things we know that's stopping us from being more successful, what do we need to do to overcome these barriers to successfully implement early warning systems for all? What's the answer? What do you think? We have some possible options for you. You may choose more than one. Enhanced data and information gathering and analysis is needed. Investment. Great. Please keep responding. I like seeing these responses go up and down on the screen. It's a fight to the finish. It sounds like people are saying right now, enhanced data and information is number one. But I've also heard people say we have too much data and information. So maybe you can help me unpack that. And innovation or investment is currently number 4. People were saying finance is the biggest problem, and yet investment is apparently not the biggest solution. Governance to increase collaboration across boundaries and sectors. Yes. Governance at the international level. Governance among the UN agencies, maybe. Governance within countries, between countries, within a country, one country. Excellent. This Menti, this last slide, will stay up for the rest of the session. So as we go through the session and you'd like to change your response, or if you'd like to add something, you're very welcome to. We won't show it on the screen at the moment because we're going to now be moving to country responses. But I really urge all of us in the room to think about what we've seen on the screen, the comments we've gotten from our participants in the room and online. To think about what people are saying, what are we not doing enough of? What do we need to do more of? This is for us to take on board as we develop and improve our systems. Excellent. I would now like to ask, if possible, to the technicians that if we could show on the screen our 3 country speakers who are joining us online. Maybe we have to shut down the Menti. Excellent. Thank you so much, Sven. We should have with us on the screen. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon from Bhutan.
Good morning.
Good morning to Bhutan. Good afternoon to Bhutan and Timor-Leste. Welcome.
Good morning, Simanjali.
It's my pleasure to welcome onto our screen and joining us online, Mr. Simanjal Patnaik, Chief Technical Advisor at UNEP in Timor-Leste, and Mr. Karma Dupchu, Permanent Representative of Bhutan with WMO at the National Center for Hydrology and Meteorology. Welcome to you both. I hope you have been able to hear our discussion and also we're able to see some of the responses or join into the questions that we asked through the Menti. Excellent. We hope that you can stay with us for much of the rest of the session. We'll have you still on screen, even when we bring in our in-person panelists onto the stage. But what we would like to ask you to start off with, I'd like to ask both of you, if possible, to briefly explain the context of early warning systems in your country. And if you can tell us a good example of early warning systems that is benefiting your country. And let me start with Bhutan.
Very good morning, good afternoon, all organizers, and also the WMO, UNEP, and UNDRR. And in fact, I would like to thank WMO for giving this opportunity to us, the panelists, for this very important forum. As you know that Bhutan, I'm from Bhutan, and Bhutan is a very small kingdom located in the Eastern Himalaya, and is a highly fragile mountain ecosystems, vulnerable to the geological and hydrological hazards. And recognizing these vulnerabilities, the royal government of Bhutan, particularly from our king, has considered that the Bhutan should protect the forest. And currently, I like to report that more than 72% of a country is under the forest covers. And I would like to mention here that Bhutan is the upstream of the India and Bangladesh, and we have also more than 51% of the country is declared as a protected national park, and also our constituted mandated that 60% of the country should be under the forest for all the times to come. And as you all know, that Bhutan is a small country, but it's a carbon negative country, and also as a carbon neutral country, and Bhutan pledged to remain as a carbon neutral country during the COP15 in 2009. But however, as from the presentations, we know that we live in an interconnected global village, and one country effort cannot make difference to the reduction of emissions and the issues and challenges we have. So from the IPCC report, we know that emission is rising, and IPCC projected that 1.5 degree rise in temperature by 2030. And also IPCC clearly signaled that every increment of a warming result in the rapidly escalating hazards. So Bhutan, being a mountainous and highly sensitive to this warming, 1.5 degree temperature is too hot for the country like Bhutan. In fact, Bhutan is, I think, already facing the impact of climate change. And in fact, there is an accelerated of melting of the glaciers, forming a glacial lake. There is an increasing number of flash floods. I would like to report that in the 20 July, due to the flash flood, 23 precious lives have been lost, and frequency of the wind storms are increasing, cyclones are increasing. There is unexpected snowfalls. Sometimes, some of the years we don't receive any snowfall, but sometimes we have very snowfalls. And even I think some of these studies, we live in the Himalayan mountains, but I think we have cited the mosquitoes in the high altitude, more than 4,000 meters above the sea levels. And I also like to report that our economy is highly dependent on the natural resources, water, and agriculture, tourism. So in order to prepare this, I think early warning system is a very important component. So therefore, particularly I think in Bhutan, we have a great threat from the melting of the glaciers. So we have established the global early warning systems, of course, through the donor funding like UNDP and GEF and other funding, and started in 2008. But from the experiences of these, our early warning I like to share is, although we clearly know there's a fourth pillar of the component or the pillar of the early warning systems, starting from the disaster risk knowledge to the observation and broadcasting, preparedness response, and disseminations. But I'd like to mention here that these four components are not independent, and it has to work together. Sometimes we feel that there is no kind of institutional linkage between this component. The very heart of the early warning is, I think, data and informations. Be it in any component, be it in any kind of pillar, the heart of the essence is the data. So, for example, like the risk knowledge for the observations. So important is, I think, the hydromet data is the key of all these preparedness, particularly when we early warning system. But we have considered this early warning component. One of the important things I think we have realized is the importance of, beside this kind of other cross-cutting issues. Particularly, I think the funding is, I think, one of the important aspect, particularly for developing and least developing countries. But important thing, as I think we realize, is institution arrangement and the partnership is the heart. Until and unless we have a very strong kind of institutional arrangement, I think early warning systems will not work. And of course, for each beat, like the good governance is, I think, another one. And also, of course, gender and other things are very important. But these are some of the things. Particularly the Bhutan, I would like to mention here that recognizing the importance of the climate change, the government has recognized particularly the national hydromet data and informations. That's why currently, I think, I head the National Center for Hydrology and Meteorology, and currently, I think government has kept us this National Center for Hydrology and Meteorology. In fact, government brought all the sciences together. Currently, my office look after the cryosphere, the snow and glaciers part, and also the hydrology part and meteorology. So being a small country, I think we are able to bring all this under the one umbrella. But in most of the country, what we have realized is these are in the different ministries and departments. So there is a lot of duplications. There is not much of institutional arrangement there. And this is one of the lessons learned, we can say. And in fact, we have a governing board where all the climate sensitives, including the disaster management authorities, are the governing boards of our sector. That's why I think for operation of the early warning, it is very easy to operate and take the information from the end to end, from the source to the last mile is possible. But there are other number of the other hindrance factors, I think I should say, but this has, I think, come up in the Mantis poll. But definitely, I think particularly developing countries, the financial is one of the main hindrance factors. And of course, access to technology and high resolution numerical weather predictions are some of the things. But of course, I think is also came in a Mantis poll that the technology, although there's a technology access, but being a developing country, we have to depend on the technology and the systems that are based on the donor funded. So in fact, particularly Bhutan, I would like to share that what we have now realized is one basin with one donor system, which is not compatible, and this is one of the challenges we are facing. And of course, that's also that it came out. It's a sustenance of this system is very difficult after the projects, and therefore, I think the role of the government, good governance, and also is very important to how to sustain this. And one of the another thing is, I think all these donor kind of component or system come in because what I feel is like there is not much of donor coordinations. There come the UNDP system, there can be JICA system, then the World Bank system. So I think our developing countries have this kind of systems. But what particularly I feel this, if donor could come up with together and bring back a good package for the early warning system, so we can develop a single early warning for each country, and also there can similar kind of systems in the region, so we can share the informations with the upstream and the downstream neighbors as well. And another thing, I think, when you talk about institutional arrangements, although we have the four pillar of the early warning component, but it is very difficult. Like for example, disasters management is not coordinating with the National Hydrometeorological Services, and also not much arrangement how we dissemination information with the local government. These are some of the challenges. But good thing is, I think there's a lot of technologies and the artificial intelligence is coming up. And for us, what is important things, we should have a good data and information. But dissemination, I think there are a number of ways I think we should able to do it. And the important things, I think one of these I would like to share is like maybe partnership and collaborations at all levels is very important. From international organization to the regional organizations to the national. So these are some of these I can think about. And once again, I think thank you very much for giving this opportunity, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Karma in Bhutan. You've raised some incredibly important points that I think have found great resonance with some of the inputs we've already seen on our Menti, issues of sustainability of financing, of coordination of data, and of the donor community, as well as the UN system. Thank you for that, and we hope that you will stay on to provide further inputs and thoughts throughout the session. It's now my pleasure to hand over to my colleague from Timor-Leste, and also to welcome our colleague from Ghana who has joined us, Ms. Dorcas Adwoa-Paintsil, Acting Executive Secretary of the Water Resources Commission in Ghana. Welcome to Dorcas. First, if I may hand over to Simanchal from Timor-Leste, if you could also tell us a bit, Simanchal, about the situation in your country as regards early warning systems and a good example of what's working well there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, good morning to all of you. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to represent Timor-Leste, which is a very small island developing state. And it's also considered as one of the least developed countries, and which is lacking most of the service sector infrastructures. So rightly pointed out during the last question in the Menti, where people have identified capacity gap, infrastructure, operation maintenance, and those are the main challenges what we are facing in Timor-Leste. And to address those challenges, we have this project funded by Global Climate Fund, and now implemented by UNEP with technical support from five technical partners. The base of this project mainly after understanding, so there is a lack of legislative and policy framework for the climate and weather information system. And there is also inadequate observation network, which is the main reason to get no challenge to get the climate and weather data, which can be further analyzed and give accurate forecasting. Then there are also capacity gap. Of course, the country is developing, and it's recently independent in 2002. So a lot of capacities also need to be built in. So what this project, so I'm actually working in this project. I'm closely sitting with the meteorological department and also supporting the national government at the environment ministry for successful implementation of this project. So this project is mainly focusing on 4 result areas, and those 4 result areas are very key to successfully implement or develop the early warning system in the country. For your kind information, so the country is, if you can analyze previously, there was a previous severe flood in 2001, and that was because of all of a sudden rain and the cyclonic storm, which actually triggered to the heavy rainfall, and then the entire city, the capital city, was flooded. And that was because the lack of proper forecasting system, and the country was depending on neighboring countries like Indonesia and Australia, though it was well managed to some extent to get those information, but it is not accurate because there was no local data collection system, or if it is there, it was due to lack of maintenance, it could not work. So what under this project, under 4 different result areas to support the national government. So I would just like to share the screen, one of my presentation, so that while I speak, you can also read through the slides. So I've just 2 small presentation. So what I am trying to say that actually there are 4 result areas. So first one is mainly to focus on the legislative and policy framework building. So how we can support the government to actually develop those policies and strategies. So the country has a very small meteorological unit, which is coming under the Ministry of Transport and Communication, but it's not having significant infrastructure covering the whole country. So when you build those first, you need also some kind of resources to manage and maintain it. And for that, you need budgetary provisions and also policies and guidelines and protocols for managing those. So the first result under this GCF funded project, which is named as the Enhancing Early Warning System to Build Greater Resilience to Hydrometeorological Hazard in Timor-Leste. It's $21.7 million US dollar project. We started from 2022 to 2027. Within this 5-year period, so we have to develop the policies, support the country in developing the policies, national framework for climate services, meteorological act, which will actually help them to strengthen their meteorological services. Second is mainly building the infrastructure. So the country was having very limited observatory network, and this project especially, you can say the majority of the funding is going to build those infrastructure. So infrastructure in terms of automated weather stations in all 9 municipalities, automated weather observation systems in 2 different airports, which will cover the entire country as per the Gibbon standard. Then there will be 3 Doppler radars, which will also supplement the observatory network. Then there is also a provision to install the marine buoy and also the tidal gauge, which will give the information about marine observation. And then this project also dialogue with SOF, through which the soft financing facility has agreed to support the country for the air observation, and also after this project can support to maintain all these observation network which will be built through this project. I think that is going to help the country, since the country has having its first-hand experience to have all these sophisticated observation network, and through which they can also analyze the data. So under this, it's not only to install all those equipments, also to support the meteorological department to set up the National Forecasting Center. And that center which can actually provide the weather and climate information up to the WMO standards. So that means how to integrate all those information coming from different observation network, then through the climate data information system platform. So how those can be analyzed, integrate, and then critically support the communities in the right time to actually forecast on different extreme weather events, as well as support the key sectors to take the decisions for right actions. So, so under this particular result 2, this is a second result 2, we are also going to support 5 key sectors. Those are agriculture, health, disaster risk reduction, energy, and water. So water is one of the major sector here, that how with this enhanced and advanced weather forecasting, we can support the water sector to whether to preserve the water, whether to manage the water in case of extreme weathers. So that are going to be part of this training and capacity building process. So when I say the decision support system, so we are going to set up the National Forecast Center, and this forecast center will be supported by decision support systems. That means those are separate applications for each of those 5 key sectors, where they can get, they can convert the scientific information, weather and climate information, into some decision, some actionable messages or information, so that they can take the action up to the community level. This is the result 2, and then result 3 is mainly when we develop all these informations, how it would be disseminated. So that requires a lot of capacity building, which already highlighted by all the articles, and also bringing those knowledge, which is a gap in the country. So we are engaging so many experts, the meteorologists, the oceanographer, hydrologists, although those capacities are not available nationally. So we are going to engage also international expert, but over the period of time, those international experts will transfer that knowledge to the local experts, those who have basic knowledge and basic education, and they are actually helping the meteorological department. So this is the large part of the result 3, where we actually establish those mechanisms so that the information can disseminate up to the community level. Last not but the least is how to enhance the risk management capacity, which more talk about how we can engage with the communities through the community-based disaster risk reduction process, so that community can better understand this information, get this information in time, and then act upon to reduce the risks of various disasters which are triggering from the climate conditions or extreme events. So this is in a nutshell that we are working with the government, also 5 technical partners, and then you can see some of the progress because it's very early stage. So the project is officially started in 22. So we are in the second year of the project, but in the meantime, we have already developed the draft national framework for climate services, which brought all the key actors, key agencies to a single platform to understand that what are the opportunities, what are the strengths, and what are the challenges we have and how we can actually overcome within a team effort, and then what kind of strategy we need to develop for mobilizing the resources. Similarly, we have
Sorry,
also
Simanchal.
working
Sorry,
with,
Simanchal, if I could just pause. Sorry, I'm so sorry. We're running very much over time. And I do want to ensure that we have our colleague from Ghana able to also provide inputs and our panelists before we get cut off and kicked out of the room. So if I could ask you if you could just wrap it up in a few seconds, and then we'll move on to our final country perspective. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so already I've already shown these progresses. I think you can better understand. So Timor-Leste mainly in a situation where we build the capacities for effective early warning system. When I say capacities in terms of skill development of skills, building the infrastructure, and then creating those human resources which will support the country from national level to the community level. I think with this support, we hope over the period during the period of this project, we could able to successfully implement all the activities and build a very resilient early warning system in the country with support from the Global Climate Fund and also all the technical partner and the national government, national service providers. So these are a few things I just wanted to share as per my experience in Timor-Leste. If you have further questions, so I will respond to you later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that very rich presentation, and also addressing so many of the factors that we've discussed or flagged in the session. And we, of course, wish you all the best with this very important project. I'd like to hand over now to our third country perspective before we open up for the panel and the discussion here in the room and online. If I could kindly welcome Ms. Dorcas Adwa Paintsil from Ghana to also give your perspective on the situation in Ghana and what's working there with early warning systems. So over to you, Ms. Dorcas.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share Ghana's experiences with the world. In Ghana, we have quite a number of warning systems across the Volta River. These systems have been piloted, and we have developed early warning systems for 10 flood-prone areas, including the Keita district and the Fantiakwa districts. Those are local government areas in Ghana. The White Volta Basin Early Warning System has also been developed, and it was developed by HKV, mainly for the White Volta Basin. There's also a system for the Oti Basin developed by HKV. Then we have the Volta Alarm System, which the Volta Basin Authority is in the process of developing to harmonize the flood early warning systems across the 6 riparian countries that share the Volta River system. So there's also there are other online systems for selected places in Ghana. Currently, we are developing the flood early warning system for the Greater Accra region, that is the capital city of Accra of Ghana, which experiences flooding from time to time. The last very serious flooding occurred in 2015, where about 150 people lost their lives. And so we are currently developing the early flood warning system, and this is being led by the Water Resources Commission. At the moment, we have also sent a proposal to GCF through UNEP DHI for the upscaling of the online flood and drought early warning system that would cover the entire country. The development of these systems have mainly been through consultative process that allows for idea sharing, and technical support has been given by various technical organizations and expertise from outside the country to also assist with capacity building within the country. Most of the house platforms and early warning systems that have been developed deals with flooding, and the online systems are assessed by registering of various participants. However, there are 4 main organizations that coordinate or collaborate to run the system. And this is the water resources, the Ghana Hydrological Authority, Ghana Meteorological Agency, and then Ghana National Authority for Disaster Management. So with all these involved, the information is relayed to farmers and local communities for the National Disaster Organization in Ghana to take action when the information comes for that. So we've had some examples. In Ghana, we've had some examples, and the examples have been good, and it has benefited the country, and lives of people have been saved. So the extension officers from the Ministry of Agriculture, that is, the experts who go to the field to advise farmers on cropping and on farming practices, are also given this information so that they can assist the farmers to practice certain aspects of their farming that would bring them benefits when there is the need for that. So in consonance that, one of the things that we were able to recommend was the early maturing crops because of the nature of floods that occur in certain parts of the country. And so we've been able to save lives, we've been able to save crops, we've been able to save some of the communities from experiencing loss of property and lives. So now what is actually hindering the uptake of and upscaling of the early warning system in Ghana has to do basically with transmission of data and the fact that many farmers are not on smartphones. So there is the need to have other forms of dissemination of information such that they can get their warnings early enough so that they can prepare and do the needful. So the reliability of the forecast information system is also critical. And it also depends on the climate. When I say climate, it depends on the physical weather conditions that sometimes influence the transmission of data. Other issues that have cropped up include the inability of certain groups of people to access the information through the telephone and their smartphones. And so, not to take much of your time, most of the early warning systems in Ghana have been through the collaborative efforts of quite a number of organizations within the local government and the national agencies responsible, which are the Water Resources Commission, the Ghana Hydrological Agency, and the Ghana Meteorological Agency. So these agencies are working to make sure that these systems work. At the moment, a few of the systems are down, but in all, it has been a very good experience for Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Dorcas, also for that very rich set of information about the situation in your country and what different actors are working there. I want to thank Ghana, Timor-Leste, and Bhutan for that very rich set of information, as well as the information we've received from the Menti, from those in the room and online. And it is now my pleasure to hand over the microphone and the moderation to my colleague, Kristen Meyer at UNDRR, who will be moderating our panel discussion here on stage. Over to you.
Do I need to switch it on? No, it works. Okay, great. Great. So this is the fun part, because now we will get interactive. To get us started, I would like to invite to the stage Joachim Harlin, who is the chief of the freshwater unit of the United Nations Environment Program. I would also like to ask Ms. Solana Mishra, who is the scientific officer of the World Meteorological Organization, and Bertrand Richaud, from who is a water resources expert at the DHI Center on Water and Environment. Okay, maybe to get us started, one question after these very, very rich experiences that we've heard. What I saw in the chat, actually, someone agreed that there is still really a lack of joint programming and coordination among, I guess, also us working in this field, our organizations, the donor community. So maybe I will start with Joachim. Do you have any reflections on that? What we could do, how we could improve on that?
You're right. Well, my first reflection was that we need to work very closely with the UN country teams, and I was also actually to strengthen coordination, right? We can also see that we international organizations have often, different counterparts in country. So, for example, WMO, I won't take the words out of your mouth here, Solagna, but you have, the Hydromet Institutes as your natural counterpart. Maybe UNEP, we have ministries of environment and so forth. And therefore, we also tend to work a little bit more towards these counterparts, and in country, maybe there's also need to strengthen the coordination, right, which would help to address these topics. So that was one reflection on that comment. The other reflection I had on that comment was that I think we also see a little bit of dichotomy between humanitarian aid and that kind of response and development aid. And I think that also might, aggravate this situation of lack of coordination. I think we need to work both sort of disaster risk response short term as well as long term. I think these issues have to come closer together.
Thanks, that's really insightful. Maybe also one statistic that we often quote is that if you have a really functioning early warning system and just 24 hours before you get a warning, you can actually prevent 30% of the losses. So that's really, really significant. But one thing that also came up with our country speakers, and this is a question to Solana, is how do we really reach the last mile? And maybe it's good for our audience to explain, first of all, what does it mean? What is the last mile? And how do we engage more with communities?
Thank you for the question. And I think it's really, really important that we are engaging with the communities and reaching the last mile, meaning what we are producing is understandable to the people it is being produced for. So the stakeholders, the people who need to be evacuated, if you're talking in terms of disasters, they need to understand the warning, they need to get the warning in the right time. And but the point is some of the strengths of the organizations, or the strengths of all our organizations are different. So, and this is where I will come back to Joachim. We need to work together with our country counterparts because all of them have different kind of reaches. And this brings me to the 4 pillars that we heard about also before from Karma, that we have these 4 pillars of early warning system, which is being coordinated or being led by all these different organizations. For example, UNDRR is responsible for a certain pillar, the pillar number 1, and WMO, for example, is responsible for monitoring, for analysis, for creating the forecast, for improving capacity. But then there is a preparedness, and then the last mile is to make sure that we are getting these SMSs in the right time. And for example, we then bring in even the Red Cross, the ITU, who have expertise in all of these. So to really being able to reach the last person on earth, that they get the information, we really have to work together. So I think this is speaking for Joachim as well.
And you're right. And this is why actually the Secretary General called for the Early Warnings for All initiative, which actually enhanced our cooperation as well between UNDR and WMO and other partners, as you have said, and really helps us also to do that joint programming in a more strategic way. But maybe to take it back to our water agenda, which is why we're here. A question to Bertrand from your perspective in terms of how can we use maybe the water action agenda and the many commitments that we have made towards this, also to support early warning systems, and what is DHI doing in that regard?
Yeah, thank you. So DHI, we are a technology provider, and we basically we have committed as part of the water action agenda to accelerate innovation in digital solution to support, for example, river basin organization. We heard the Volta Basin and cities in Africa to solve their water challenges. And I think we have seen that technology will not solve everything, but it's part of the problem. And I think there is some good reflection to do also on standardization. There are many systems. It's probably not one technology that will solve everything, but those systems, they should talk together. They should be compatible. And I think that's one of the key message with many others that we can take from what we've heard earlier today.
Yeah, we also heard it's very important to have multi-hazard early warning systems, right? Like to combine systems and look at hazards in an integrated way. Maybe I will open it to the floor, and it's also great that some of our country representatives are still online. Does anyone have any questions, comments? We have a floating microphone over there, or also from the chat. If anyone online has any questions, please do also put it in the chat. I see a hand over there. Yes.
Hello. Thanks so much for a really good talk this morning. I wanted to go back to that point, this last one on better cooperation at a data level even, but also the human level. I mean, I know there's, my name is Robert, by the way. I'm Climate and Data Lead at ACO Foundation, Netherlands. We were just talking to some colleagues in the Horn of Africa, and we were talking about sort of drought prevention, drought early warning, mitigation. And one of the key challenges that came up was basically across that region, can't remember the exact number, but there were close to 15 to 20 different ministries, department organizations, all working on the topic of drought. But but the coordination aspect of that was very, very difficult. And maybe all of them have their own individual systems. Someone chose UNEP, someone chose something else. That role of sort of data sharing and moving more towards sort of open data in this space between all these systems that are largely working with similar data. And again, I'm not a believer that data has to be perfect. It has to be good enough to make decisions. If we sort of chase the data perfection, we'll probably never get the work done. But your experiences in that space of sort of using data for common good, data sharing, and how that can sort of help a coordination. Although we also need, of course, the human level on top of that. It's not all data, APIs, transparency. Your experiences in that, I'm just curious. Thank you.
You can start.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, thanks, Robert. I think that's also another point. I mean, data is key. I think sometimes there is too much data, but I think I also want to say that in some cases, in many cases, there is not enough local data. So it's actually a challenge we are facing when we are to implement systems. We are implementing system now in Tanzania, for example, and we hardly have hydromet data, and we have lots of satellite data. they might in the future solve. I mean, there is a SWOT satellite data that is coming out. I think this is probably a great innovation. So I think innovation is needed also in this sector. But data is a challenge, and I think there, I mean, harmonization of data is key. I mean, following some of the standards, and maybe I can let the WMO also speak on that. And technology can also help on that with APIs and platform to actually make sure all the system they can talk together, they're compatible. So that's, I think, key in the success of the system. When systems are implemented, they should rely on standards and follow those standards and be open, at least on the data side. Yeah, but maybe please.
I'll pick it up from the word standard. Yeah, so at WMO, we do encourage open data sharing. So we have the open data sharing policy, in which most of the important meteorological parameters are already included. But hydrological data, as we know, is also very country sensitive in many cases. So what we are working towards is we have a platform called WHOS, a WMO hydrological observing system, and this works as a broker, and it exactly does what you just said. It helps in harmonizing and standardizing the data coming from different formats and different languages, and it helps countries to access the data from each other. Of course, there are MOUs and everything that needs to be signed, but this is in place. However, what we are also encouraging is, if you cannot share the data, you can at least share the information. So you can share the indicators which are calculated in a standard way. So we don't need to have all the Excel sheets that are there in your database. What we need to know is what's the status going to look like? What's the outlook looking like in form of a in a color or in a percentile or so on, that can help your neighbors or the other parts of the world make a decision on how they can allocate resources, or how they can plan where to put a factory, or whatever decision they need to make, which is relied on or which is relying on water data. This information can be shared. So this is something that we are working on. Apart from that, there are so many there is so much data. As you said, there is a lot of data, but it's scattered. Sometimes it's not geospatially referenced. It's all it's in different portals, and there are so many global portals that we also saw was one of the answers from the Menti. So what you're also working towards, it was one of the commitments from FAO and WMO to the Water Action Agenda, was a global water data portal. And what we are trying to do with this is create one platform where all the existing indicators that are available across the different platforms can be brought together as different layers, and users can download this information, and they can also perform arithmetics on it, they can perform what kind of operations they would like to have. And it's an initiative by WMO and FAO, but we have UNEP coming in together, we have the bank, we have WRI, we have different partners who have plenty of information to come in together. So we have this one place, at least we can see what we have that's available before scratching the surface and starting something all over again.
I saw a hand up on this side. Maybe I go give you the mic.
Thank you. My name is Edwin. I work for CRS, Catholic Relief Services. I'm actually coincidentally based in Timor-Leste as well. Just echoing the first speaker, we have 51 projects. I think the last figure that I got was 51 projects all across the country in DRR, and don't know how many organizations, but very uncoordinated. So that's a thing that I agree with. My question is, I'm the DRR and Emergencies Program Manager for CRS in Timor. And my worry really is when I look at the sort of last mile delivery, I see that UNEP is sort of building up the early warning system in the country, which is great, but connecting it down to the person on the ground that really needs that, especially in such a rural country like Timor-Leste, is my concern. And I wonder what innovation is being explored in this realm, because 50% of the country doesn't have mobile access. There's huge illiteracy rates, and we're doing very sort of rudimentary early warning systems at the community level. water level marks that are just stationary there without any power, sirens, we have our chiefs going around like with their megaphones. So I wonder if there's any, as you said, complementarity from all the way to source, all the way down to last mile. What innovation is being done there?
And I think that was also echoed by our colleague from Ghana, that you need to communicate in the right kind of way. I will just ask who would like to respond to that very tough question that I think that all of us are still struggling with. Or maybe also our panelists online, if you, or Liz, yeah.
Maybe I think what might be really nice is to have the two of you connect to each other for conversation afterwards, because I think there's a lot of detail. You should know each other, first of all, in Timor-Leste, and there's a lot of detail that I'm sure you can share. But I know that across a lot of our adaptation and early warning projects, UNEP is looking at things like radio. So we're going back to, the service that everyone listens to, local television, radio. Even if people don't have a phone themselves or a radio themselves or a television themselves, they often at least share with somebody in the village or somebody nearby. You might gather around that and get the information in that way. So I think we have to be very mindful of the fact that not everyone has this kind of phone, not everyone has the internet. It's not the way much of the world communicates, and especially in countries like this. But I really appreciate the examples you've named, and maybe that's something we can learn and take into our project. So it'd be great to continue that conversation after the session. Thank you.
My name is Jeremy. My name is Jeremy. There we go. From RTI International. I was wondering if you could speak to, especially when you're building these nascent early warning systems, how you kind of build in these accountability metrics such that you're ensuring that it's timely enough for response, that you're building accuracy. To his point, that you're making sure like what percentage of people are actually getting the messages, understanding the messages, being able to make them actionable, and how you're building in that accountability in a sort of measurable way.
Any takers?
I can answer for the parts that we that comes under our preview. For example, at WMO, when we start a project, we always have stakeholder engagements to understand their needs, how they would like to get the messages delivered, and what kind of warnings they would like to have. So this is a community level work that we do in the beginning of every project, and based on that, we develop the indicators that are applicable to that area, and then we go ahead with the project. So this is something that we do. But then once the predictions and the forecasts are in place, this is really when we start working very, very closely with our partners at UNDRR, for example, and ITU and IFRC to make sure that these are delivered to the right people in the right format that is understandable and reachable to them in the right time.
Any last words from any of the panelists? Because we are unfortunately running out of time, and I know people want to go to the next session.
All right, I'll say a few things. Thank you. I think this was really good questions, and it shows that we cannot just work with technology, even if I think that there is so much happening there and we should take advantage of it. And but obviously the uptake, the interpretation, reaching out in the right way, and working very local is just as important. And I would also just like to say that we focused quite a lot now on floods, but we have to also think about other types of disasters. We saw them on the screen, and therefore it's not always just the very immediate. So floods are quite immediate, storms are immediate, but droughts, landslides, forest fires, we build up for them, right? And we need to also work a little bit more seasonal, a bit more long term, and I think also just to factor in, us humans, we're involved in actually paving the way for disasters in different ways. The land use that we practice will influence what it will run off or will not infiltrate, or our planning, urban planning and so forth, how close we are, how vulnerable we are. So it just goes to show that we need to work very much across different sectors of society. And as a final word, I've seen here in Sweden how they also work between disasters, and they put in place, you could say, a multi-stakeholder or multi-institutional response team, including different departments and authorities that meet and they plan and prepare for different types of disasters. And I think we need to think that way, especially now when these events are getting more frequent, that we have to build that capacity also in country for the institutional collaboration from, the response units, the police, the authorities, also those that deliver the information, and going down to the local level, if we're talking about community village level, the education, and have that as something that is ongoing, because this is not just going to be the exception, this is going to be the norm.
Yeah, thank you. I think that wraps it up quite well, that we shouldn't just look at extreme events, but also on what we call slow onset events that develop over time. I think that's a really important point that wasn't said yet. Thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you for your questions. I will hand over the mic back to Liz to close the session.
Thank you so much, everyone. And you're welcome to stand for the last 3 or 4 minutes. You may also sit down if you feel more comfortable doing so. I would love to give the last few minutes of this session to our colleague, Amgad Almadi, the water sector lead at the Green Climate Fund, who's been joining us online. Amgad, I'd love to hear from you a bit of your reflections. First of all, you're welcome to reflect on what you've heard in the session, but also we'd love to hear from you about GCF's plans for supporting early warning systems in the area of water. Welcome to you, and over to you.
Thanks, Liz, and I hope you can hear me well. What I wanted to use those 2-3 minutes, it's quickly give a reflection, but from GCF perspective, which again, what we have here for the last an hour and a half, very aligned with what we have seen as a challenge in our portfolio for early warning system. So currently, at the moment, we have invested so far around 1 billion in the early warning project that really include around 62 projects, like 42 and LDCs and 35 in small islands. But what we found actually in our current portfolio, including even the pipelines project, so I'm related to like the lack of coordination, also like the regional and thematic aspects of the project. In terms of finance, they are all looking for grants, and that's also adding a challenge in where you can actually look at the private sector opportunity for finance. But like I also wanted to say, like money is there. I think the problem is how you align the supply and demand, or align the two pipelines, like the demand pipeline and the supply pipeline. And that's coming to the point, I think, that you want that make about like that collaboration and coordinations between donors and governments as well. We have very but also like the other issue is really like the sustainability. I'm thinking that being captured already on the maintenance terms. I was glad to see like the operational and maintenance coming as one of those aspects as well, because again, that come to the sustainability, and sustainability, of course, go beyond the system by itself. It's actually go to the community, how we empower community, how we be able to disseminate the information of the early warning to reach really everyone, how that used to inform the water resource management or the irrigation management and so on. So at our end, like the early warning or climate information and early warning system, it's one of our high priority, and it's coming very clear in our GCF2 or our next strategy from 24 to 27 for the next 4 years, coming very clear how we supported the early warning system and early warning for all initiative, and also with a great support as well from our board. And I want to use this to reflect on what is the opportunity here, like how we can actually, as GCF, contribute into that space and also support the early warning system, taking like the two great example that we have here from Ghana and also from Lestimo. I think it's what we actually doing at our end. So first, in terms of also the capacity building issues that came across the discussion. So we have released the water project design guidelines, and that actually put like a very structured framework on how you design your water project. And we applied that guidelines with like 4 examples. 2 of them are really linked very strongly. One is flood mitigation and the second is drought management. And that again reflect on how you look at the climate information early warning system within the flood mitigation project or drought management project. So that's on the capacity building side. On the other side, in terms of like access to finance or access to climate finance, because it's been highlighted, there is a humanitarian fund, there is a development fund as well. But in terms of climate finance as a green climate fund, so what we are doing is actually, we have the SAB mechanism or the simplified approved process. So we developed that SAB program to be as like a scale up framework. So it actually can help to scale up the early warning system. And this up to 25 million you can request from GCF. The second aspect, we also developing what we call it like a fast track template for the early warning system. And that with the aim to be implemented from next year. And that fast track will be again, like we will put a very clear template with a very clear structure that can be just applied in each countries. And that fast track, again, we try to develop now all the process around it to be really easy to be reviewed, easy to be approved, and then have the access to the finance to develop that early warning system through the fast track. But also on the other side, we are very engaged with all partners like WMO, the IFRC, the SOF, the UNDP, like everyone, UNEP, like we are really very much involved, and we try to, again, to develop like one of our accelerator program under early warning for all, because when we see the early warning for all initiative, we have found like it require like a financial plan. It require a support to generate the pipeline to reach the level of maturity where they can really access finance. It require also like a coordination mechanism between all pillars, all actors, all players. And probably it require also like to provide like some pilot as an early mover that can actually encourage other countries as well to move in. And we are at the moment developing this early warning for all program that will become as an accelerator with UNDP, WHO, and all other key partners. And that's actually looking to tackle like a number of countries like Antigua, Barbuda, Cambodia, Chad, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Fiji, Somalia. And those countries will be like an example of that initiative to be able to help them to define like the pipeline as acceleration to be developed, but also to enhance the enabling condition, and also to develop like the national priority, and also leverage on those opportunity by like a good example projects that will be funded through like GCF at the beginning as the acceleration, with the aim also to use this through the coordination activity to leverage that finance under early warning for all, because we know like 3 billion required for early warning for all, and that money will not come from one single donor or fund or organization. So we try to use our resources to support that initiative and leverage the resources for that big initiative, but also try to see how that will be again implemented in a way to serve the water sector. So I will stop here, Liz, and happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you.
Abga, thank you so much for joining us for the session. Thank you for your reflections, and also, most of all, thank you for the support and leadership of GCF in this area. Unfortunately, we are just a few minutes over time, so I believe our session needs to end formally now. But I do welcome all of you to take a look at the chat. There are some great questions. You may reach out to any of us as well for a conversation after the session. Please do. And thank you to all who joined us in person online. Thank you also to those who could not be with us here in Stockholm, in particular, dear colleagues at UNEP, as well as World Food Program, who were so instrumental in helping us make this presentation. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.